There are exactly 4 used SUVs I would spend my own money on in 2026. And before this is finished, you'll have all 4 by name, the engine and transmission codes that make them worth having, what they're actually selling for right now, and the single component on each one that decides whether you bought a bargain or a payment plan. 4, not 14. That number isn't me being difficult. It's what's left after you strip out everything with a continuously variable transmission, everything with a small turbocharged direct injection engine that's already passed its warranty, and everything where the cheapest known failure costs more than the vehicle's book value. Here's the market you're walking into. The average used vehicle listing price hit $27,027 in June, the highest June figure since 2023. New vehicles average just under $49,900 in July. So the used lot isn't the bargain aisle anymore, it's the only aisle, and everybody's in it with you. Which means when you get it wrong expensively. I've had the Valley plate off a 4.6 Toyota V8 enough times to know what that coolant smells like before the skid plate is even on the floor. That's the sort of thing this list is built on. Not brand loyalty, not resale charts, what actually breaks, when and what it costs to put right. 3 things to hang on to while we go. Number 4 wears a Lexus badge and is, underneath, a Land Cruiser Prado. And in April of 2010, a major consumer magazine told America flat out not to buy it. 6 years of hindsight later, that episode is part of why it's the best value on this list, and I'll show you exactly why. Number 3 has an engine that will run past 300,000 miles, and that engine is almost irrelevant to whether you should buy the truck. What matters is a steel rail behind the rear wheel and a screwdriver. And number 1, the cheapest thing here by a country mile, comes in 2 flavors, same badge, same model year, same everything to look at, and one of them I'd walk away from in the parking lot. Let's get into it. Before the count, one idea that has to land or the rest of this is just a shopping list. There is no such thing as a reliable brand. There are reliable powertrains, built in specific years, bolted to specific transmissions, and every manufacturer on Earth has produced both kinds. Toyota built the fuel pump that stalled 3.25 million of its own vehicles. Honda built an engine that drinks its own gasoline in cold weather. Brand tells you almost nothing. The combination of engine code, transmission type, and model year tells you nearly everything. So the thread running through all 4 of these is the same. And once you see it, you'll see it on every lot you walk. Every vehicle on this list has a naturally aspirated engine and a conventional torque converter automatic transmission. No belt and pulley CVT, no little turbo working hard to make a big engine's numbers. That is not nostalgia, and it isn't me being a dinosaur about it. It's that those 2 components are where the last 15 years of cost-cutting and fuel economy engineering went, and they're where the money goes when it goes wrong. The old hands in any driveline shop will tell you the same thing in fewer words. Complexity is fine when somebody's paying for it. The question is who? Number 1. The Mazda CX-5, model years 2016 through 2021, with the 2.5-litre Skyactiv-G 4-cylinder and the 6-speed automatic. Average used CX-5 across the country right now is about 18,500 out of roughly 13,000 listings, with genuinely good examples turning up under 12. In a market where the average used anything is 27 grand, that's the cheapest honest entry point in this entire segment. What you're getting is a compact crossover with a high compression naturally aspirated 4 and a real torque converter automatic with 6 actual gears in it. Not a CVT. That matters more than any other single fact about this vehicle. Because in this class, in these years, nearly everything else came with a belt running between 2 cones. Mazda kept the conventional automatic when the whole industry walked away from it, and they did it partly out of stubbornness and partly because their engineers were chasing a specific throttle feel. You get the durability as a side effect of somebody else's obsession. The mechanism worth understanding is the compression ratio. Mazda ran these engines at around 13:1, which is territory that normally means premium fuel and detonation problems. They got away with it on regular gas by redesigning the exhaust manifold to scavenge hot leftover gas out of the cylinder before the next charge comes in, and by cooling that charge on the way down. Think of it like emptying a stock pot completely between batches instead of just topping it up. By the way, whether you drive a Ute, a 4WD, or one of the newer Chinese cars hitting Australian roads, keeping it reliable comes down to what you do before the problems start. That's why I put together the 500,000 kilometer car care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your vehicle last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot workshop upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera or use the first pinned comment below. Nothing hot and stale hangs around to set the next one off early. That's the whole trick. No turbo, no extra plumbing, no intercooler, no wastegate, no boost hoses to split at 8 years old. Now, the honest part, it's direct injection, which means fuel is sprayed straight into the cylinder and never washes the back of the intake valves. Carbon builds up on those valve packs over high mileage, especially on short trip driving. Mazda designed around it better than most, but it's a real characteristic, and it's why I'd rather see a highway commuter than a car that did 4-mile school runs for 100,000. Suspension is where these actually cost you. Ball joints and front lower control arm bushings show up repeatedly in owner reports on the mid-2010s cars, and Mazda's answer on some of them is that you replace the entire control arm rather than the joint, which is how a worn ball joint turns into a 4-figure quote. Budget for a control arm at some point. It's a wear item on this car, not a defect. And here's the loop I promised. There's a 2.5-litre turbo version of this same engine in this same body, and I would not buy it out of warranty. Between roughly 2016 and 2021, across the turbocharged Skyactiv cars, there's a documented pattern of hairline cracks in the cylinder head near the exhaust flange, where heat from the integrated manifold overstresses the casting around the stud bosses. It starts as a faint, sweet smell or a hiss after shutdown. It ends in coolant loss and overheating, and out of warranty, the repair is reported around $8,000. I'll be straight with you. I have not personally had a stack of those heads on a bench, so I'm going on the pattern in the reports and the shop write-ups rather than my own hands. But the pattern is consistent enough that I'd take the non-turbo every time and never feel like I compromised. So the cheapest thing on the list is also the one where the badge lies to you the most, because the good one and the one to avoid are parked next to each other, looking identical. Which brings me to the opposite problem, a vehicle where there's nothing to decode at all, and I'm going to be brief about it for exactly that reason. Number 2, the Toyota Highlander 2018 and 2019 V6. Average used Highlander is about 26,200 across 14,000 listings. 3.5-litre V6, the 2GR FKS, running both port and direct injection, so the intake valves get washed, and the carbon problem I just described largely doesn't happen. 8-speed automatic, 295 horsepower, 5,000 pounds of towing when it's set up for it, 3 rows, timing chain, not a belt. That's it. That's the pitch. It is the least interesting vehicle in this video, and it's on the list because a very large number of people need to move 7 humans and don't need anything else to happen. Skip the 2017 if you can. Early 8-speed shift calibration complaints cluster there. Skip the 2.7 4-cylinder unless the price genuinely reflects how much slower it is. Watch for water pump seepage and a weeping timing cover on high mileage examples, both normal Toyota V6 wear, neither catastrophic. Now, notice what those two have in common because the pattern is the whole argument. Neither one is exotic, neither one is rare, both of them are on the list because somebody at the manufacturer declined to modernize a component when everyone else did. Mazda kept the torque converter, Toyota kept port injection alongside direct, and kept a naturally aspirated V6 in a segment that had gone turbo 4. In both cases, the conservative choice reads as boring on the spec sheet and pays you back in year 9. From here, the money goes up and so does the capability, and the failure modes stop being wear items and start being structural. The last two are body-on-frame trucks, and with a body-on-frame truck, the question stops being how's the engine and starts being what has the road done to the underside of this thing. That's where the screwdriver comes in. If this is the kind of buying advice you want more of, subscribe. That's the whole ask, and it costs you nothing. 2 left, and number 4 is the one I flagged at the start. The Lexus that a magazine told people not to buy, which is now the reason it's cheap enough to be interesting. First, the one everybody already wants. Number 3, the Toyota 4Runner. 5th generation, 2014 through 2024. The average used 4Runner in the country is running just under $39,000, and that's with clean older examples starting around 10. That price is not an accident, and it's not hype. It's what happens when a vehicle holds its value so hard that owners genuinely calculate depreciation as a rounding error. Under the hood is the 4.0-litre 1GR FE V6, mated to a 5-speed automatic. That combination ran essentially unchanged from 2010 to 2024, 15 model years. Toyota had a decade and a half to find every weakness in it and quietly fix it, and they did. And the result is that the 5th generation has no major powertrain recalls across its production run. Now, on the longevity claim, let me be careful because the sources genuinely split here. Multiple owner communities and shop write-ups document these engines past 300,000 miles on nothing more than oil, fluids, and wear items. But one of the more technical engine databases takes a harder line, pointing out that the 1GR block has cast-in thin cylinder liners that can't be bored out, meaning if you do damage a cylinder wall, you're not rebuilding it, you're replacing the block. That source puts realistic longevity nearer 200,000. My read, and I'm calling it a read, not a fact, is that both are true and they're describing different populations. Maintained on 5,000-mile oil changes, it'll go the distance. Neglected, it has no margin for a rebuild, and that's a real and underappreciated limitation of the design. The failures that do kill high-mileage 4Runners almost never start in the engine anyway. They start in the rear differential and the transfer case, because Toyota's maintenance language for those fluids says inspect, and inspect is a word that means most owners never change them at all. That's a $30 problem being allowed to become a $3,000 one by a verb. Here's the loop I promised, and it's the single most important sentence in this section. On any 4Runner older than about 15 years, frame condition matters more than mileage. Full stop. Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Wisconsin, anywhere they salt the roads, frames rot from the inside out. Toyota extended coverage on some of them years ago, and that program is long finished. So here's what you do, and this is the whole inspection in 3 moves. Get under the truck with a flashlight, find the frame rails behind the rear wheels, where the salt spray collects and never dries. Poke firmly with a screwdriver. If the surface flakes and the tip goes in, you walk away and you don't negotiate. Surface scale is normal on any northern truck. Flaking that gives under a screwdriver is structural, and there is no economical repair. And I want you to sit with what that means for pricing, because it's the most useful thing on this list. A clean-framed Arizona or Texas truck with 180,000 miles is worth more than a rusted northeastern one with 90,000. That is not my opinion. That is what the market pays, and if you understand it, you can buy a high-mileage southern truck with confidence, while everybody else is bidding up a low-mileage northern one that's dissolving. If you're the person who's about to fly somewhere warm to buy a truck and drive it home this fall, that's the reason it's worth doing. And if you're watching from a salt state and you've just realized what's under your own truck, I'm sorry, and go look anyway. Annual repair cost on these averages $514 against a $573 midsize SUV average. Fuel economy is bad, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. 16, 17, 18 miles per gallon depending on how heavy your foot is. That's the toll for a ladder frame and a low-range transfer case, and if you don't need either of those things, buy the Highlander and bank the difference. Which is the perfect place to talk about the vehicle that gives you the exact same ladder frame, a V8 instead of a V6, and a leather interior for the same money. Number 4, the Lexus GX 460, second generation, 2014 through 2023. Average listing across the country is right around 39,800 on one site and just over 39,000 on another, so call it 40. Same money as the 4Runner. Older examples go much cheaper. A 2011 with 89,000 miles turning up around 21.5. A 2014 with 104,000 at just under 25. Here's what you're actually buying. The GX 460 is the J150 platform, which is sold in most of the world as the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado. It's a ladder frame, it has a full-time 4-wheel drive system with a locking center differential and low range, and it will do things in the dirt that the people who bought them to reach the country club never found out about. The engine is the 4.6-litre 1YR FE V8, an all-aluminum design Toyota originally developed for the LS 460 sedan and then detuned for truck duty. 6-speed automatic. Owner documentation on the off-road forums consistently records these trucks at 250 to 350,000 miles on routine oil, fluid and coolant service. Now the story I flagged at the beginning. In April 2010, Consumer Reports gave the brand new GX460 Air Don't Buy Safety Risk designation, a rating they hand out extremely rarely. In their lift-off oversteer test, where the driver lifts off the throttle mid-corner, the rear end came around until the vehicle was nearly sideways before the stability control caught it. Toyota recalled roughly 9,400 vehicles, halted sales, and reprogrammed the stability control software. Consumer Reports took their own car to the dealer, had the update done in about an hour and a half, retested it, and lifted the rating. The system now intervened early, and the truck pushed wide instead of stepping out. Two things fall out of that. First, every GX460 you can buy today has had that update for over 15 years, so it's a historical footnote, not a hazard. Second, and this is the part that matters to your wallet, that episode, plus a body-on-frame ride that reviewers politely called ponderous, plus 15 or 16 miles per gallon, kept the GX permanently unfashionable. Unfashionable is exactly what you want in a used vehicle. You are being paid in dollars for other people's indifference. The known failure points are specific and they are predictable, which is the best thing you can say about any used vehicle. 3 of them. The coolant valley plate, which sits in the V of the engine, tends to start weeping around 100,000 miles. It's the same on every 4.6 and 5.7 Toyota V8. Not catastrophic if you catch it, expensive if you don't because it's under the intake. On 2010 through 2013 cars, the secondary air injection system fails, the foam filter inside the air pump disintegrates and gets drawn into the valves and lines, and you get a check engine light with codes in the P2440 range, sometimes limp mode. Owners have reported roughly $2,500 for pump and both switching valves. Toyota redesigned it, and 2014 and later cars are reported as fixed, which is precisely why I've bracketed this recommendation at 2014. Third is the kinetic dynamic suspension system, the hydraulic anti-roll setup fitted to luxury trims and some premium packages. Some of these trucks lean visibly to one side, sitting still from new. Owners report it at 10,000 miles. It affects Prados and 4Runners and Land Cruisers with the same system, and here's the honest bit. I have never seen a satisfying engineering explanation of why it happens on some units and not others. Lexus issued a bulletin. Plenty of owners were told the vehicle was within spec and sent home. I'm not going to invent a mechanism for you. Look at the truck from 30 feet behind it on flat ground before you buy it. And if it's cocked over, that's a negotiation or a walk. Average annual repair cost is around $664 below the luxury SUV segment. And the reason that number is achievable is the thing that ties this whole list together. The parts are Toyota parts in a Toyota parts catalog, at Toyota prices, wearing a Lexus badge. Now here's the part that should make you a little angry, and it's aimed squarely at the brand I've just spent 10 minutes recommending, because that's the only way this is honest. Inside the fuel tank of a very large number of Toyotas and Lexuses, built between 2013 and 2020, there's a small plastic disc called an impeller. It spins, and it pushes gasoline out of the tank toward the engine. It costs somewhere around 50 cents to manufacture, less than a candy bar. In 2020, the supplier, Denso, told the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that the resin used to mold those impellers was too porous. Gasoline soaks into the plastic. The disc swells and warps, it binds against its housing, and the engine quits, sometimes at a light, sometimes at 70 miles an hour, on the interstate with somebody's family behind you. Toyota recalled 3.34 million vehicles in the United States that January. Then they expanded it. Then they expanded it again in January 2025, sweeping in the 4Runner, the Highlander, the Land Cruiser, the Tacoma, and more Lexus models through the 2020 model year. Then again in April 2026. I'll flag that the totals differ depending on which report you read. Some sources say 3.5 million, others cite 5.8 million worldwide. So I'm taking the conservative number and telling you the direction of travel matters more than the digit. 6 years on, they are still adding vehicles to this list. Now, the part you're actually paying for. Denso didn't get caught by an investigation. Denso went to the regulator themselves and reported it. They knew. They knew what the resin density was because somebody specified it, and somebody signed off on a material spec that saved a fraction of a cent per unit across tens of millions of pumps. Sit with the arithmetic. Half a cent times 50 million parts is real money in a supplier's quarterly numbers, and the cost of that decision didn't land on the supplier, and it didn't land on the automaker. It landed in your fuel tank 7 years later as an engine that stops. The class action settled in December 2022, reported in the range of $212 to $288 million. Both companies denied all liability. The remedy included extending the warranty on the pump to 15 years. Read that as what it is. They will replace the part eventually if it fails, if you find out, if you bring it in. What they will not do is say the sentence out loud. We specified a cheaper plastic, and it wasn't good enough. And here's what it means for you this week, standing on a lot. Nobody is going to tell you whether the truck in front of you has had the pump done. Not the salesman, who doesn't know. Not the previous owner, who threw the letter away. The recall notice went to whoever owned it in 2020, and it's now been through 3 sets of hands. You have to check it yourself. Write the VIN down off the windshield. Go to the Federal Recall lookup. It's free, it takes 90 seconds, and it will tell you every open recall on that specific vehicle. Do it before you drive it, not after. Because the one thing a 50-cent decision made in a boardroom in 2015 cannot survive is a buyer who checks. There's something I keep noticing about people who are good at this. They're not the ones who memorized which brands are reliable. That's a bumper sticker, not a skill. The good ones have something more like a trained eye. They can look at a machine or a spec sheet or a maintenance schedule and tell you what it's going to ask of them over the next 10 years. Not whether it'll break, everything breaks. What it's going to ask. That's judgment. And it's a genuinely learnable skill, and almost nobody teaches it because there's no money in you having it. A vehicle with a naturally aspirated engine and a torque converter will ask you for fluids on schedule and a control arm somewhere in the middle. A vehicle with a small turbo and a CVT will ask you for the same fluids, and then one day it will ask you for $4,000 all at once, at a moment it chooses. Neither one is good or bad in some cosmic sense. They're different bargains. But you can only choose between bargains if somebody has shown you what the terms are, and the terms are never printed on the window sticker. The person in your family who can walk around a used vehicle and tell everyone what it's going to cost over a decade is doing something quietly valuable. It's not mechanical genius, it's pattern recognition, learned one truck at a time, and it saves more money over a lifetime than almost any financial decision most people will ever make. So here's the whole thing in order, and then a procedure you can actually run. The 4. Mazda CX-5, 2016 to 2021, 2.5 naturally aspirated with the 6-speed automatic. Around 18,500 average, avoid the turbo out of warranty, budget for a control arm. Toyota Highlander 2018 or 2019, 3.5 V6. Around 26,000, 3 rows, boring on purpose. Toyota 4Runner, 5th generation. Around 39,000, 4.0 V6 and 5-speed, and the frame decides everything. Lexus GX 460, 2014, and later, around 40,000, Land Cruiser Prado underneath 4.6 V8. Check the valley plate and check whether it's sitting level. Now the procedure. 5 steps, run it on anything, not just these 4. 1. Identify the exact engine and transmission before you look at the paint. Not the trim name, the engine. 2 versions of the same model in the same year can be a decade apart in ownership cost, and the CX-5 proves it. 2. Write down the VN and run the free Federal Recall lookup on your phone, standing next to the vehicle. Open recalls are free to fix, and they tell you how the previous owner treated correspondence. 3. Start it cold. Not warmed up for you before you arrive. Cold. Listen for the first 15 seconds. That's when a tired timing chain, a dry lifter, and a failing pump all announce themselves. And it's the only 15 seconds you'll get. 4. Pay for a pre-purchase inspection at an independent shop that works on that make. Not the selling dealer, not a chain. On a body-on-frame truck, tell them explicitly that you want the frame rails and the crossmembers probed, in writing. 5. Price the known failure into your offer. If it's a GX with 90,000 miles, the valley plate is coming. That isn't a reason not to buy it, it's a line item, and you either subtract it from the asking price or you decide it's worth paying. And the go or walk rule, because a procedure needs one. If the inspection finds a wear item, bushings, a control arm, a water pump, a leaking cover, negotiate and buy. If it finds a structural or a sealed system fault, flaking frame, a cracked head, coolant in the oil, a transmission that shudders under light throttle at 40, walk no matter how clean the paint is and no matter how much you liked driving it. Do that, and here's what your next 10 years look like. Not a dramatic story, just the absence of one. There's no morning where you're standing in a service drive being told a number that changes your month, and no evening spent working out whether it's worth fixing. The bill simply never arrives, and you slowly forget you avoided it. I want to hear where you're watching this from, because geography decides more about these 4 vehicles than anything else in this video. Tell me your state and tell me what the underside of a 15-year-old truck looks like where you live. Salt states, I want to know whether they still brine the roads in your county and what that's done to the frames on your street. Southwest, tell me whether your problem is rot or whether it's every rubber and plastic part on the vehicle turning to dust in the sun. Pacific Northwest, tell me what constant damp does that dry cold doesn't. I read these and I learned from them genuinely. The regional stuff is the part no national reliability survey ever captures properly. And if you think I got one wrong, say so plainly. Somebody's going to argue the Honda Pilot belongs here, or that I'm being unfair to the CVT, and honestly, the CVT people might have a point about the newer chain-driven units. That's an argument I haven't settled in my own head yet. Bring your mileage and your repair bills and make the case. There's one thread I deliberately didn't pull today. On 2 of these 4, the transmission has no dipstick, and the manufacturer's own language about the fluid inside it is doing a lot of quiet work. I've been picking at that word for a while, and I don't think it means what people are being allowed to believe it means. That one's coming. Subscribe if you'd rather not miss it. Go check your VIN. It takes 90 seconds, and it's free, and I'd rather you did that than watch another one of these.